Sorry about that. Good afternoon. Starting to talk and still had my mic muted. My apologies for the delay. Um, but let's get started so that I can be um, aware of everyone's time. Okay, and I'm sure when you entered, you heard that this is being recorded. So I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. It will be put up on the website so that if you're either unable to watch the whole thing or, we're late coming in, it'll be there for you to listen to at a later time. Sorry about that. Let me mute that. I apologize. Okay. Now, and I will let you know that this will not take an hour. I think in the future I will make sure to make the time frame just a little bit less because I know it's a little difficult sometimes for people. Most of us don't get an hour for lunch, so I'm going to try to cut them down if they're not already shortened down to 30 minutes to make sure that they are 30 minutes for in the future. But let's get started. Let me see if this will work. Technology is not always my friend. So let me see if it's going to let me show the slide show. No, it is not. Okay, hold on one second. Let me try this a different way. Okay, let me do this. Okay, let me see. I need to make sure. Yay, it is showing. Again, the slideshow. Okay. Okay. Hopefully this will work. So again, good afternoon. My name is Laura Kibbe, and I am your host for this webinar on weight management for children and adolescents. Okay. So this is going to try to be an open discussion. I'm actually probably going to reinforce a lot of information you may already know. I hope it doesn't sound too repetitive for you, but hopefully it will also act as some reinforcement for you. Because I know sometimes with parenting or taking care of children, if you're a daycare provider or whatnot, sometimes just knowing that we're doing the right things for children is a plus and is beneficial. So what we'll be discussing is, why is this a concern? Why is it a concern to have children and adolescent weight management as a topic? And we're going to go over some healthy weight ranges and things for children, 3 to 18, and that's a really big span for our children. So kind of what I'm covering is what pediatricians might look at or patients they may see, though I do know some pediatricians, may see children up to the age of 21. But we're going to just focus 3 to 18 because after they turn 18, they're not always in our home anymore. So hopefully we can instill some positive things for our children before they get out on their own. And we'll talk about some challenges for today, and then working within those challenges to help us with our children eating healthy and exercising and activities possibly outside the box just a little bit. So first, just a real brief introduction about myself. Again, my name is Laura. I am from upstate New York originally, but I've been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area now for well over 30 years. I am a daughter, a sister, aunt, mother, grandmother. So I've, had different aspects of what it's like being with children. I used to babysit a lot when I was a kid, and of course things were done way different. I shouldn't say way different, but were done differently back when I was a child versus, even bringing my children up, because back when I was a child, we didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have some of the things and the challenges that we're seeing today. I am also a nurse. I am a registered nurse and have been since like 1986, so well over 30 years. I have experiences in medical orthopedics, rehab, pediatric home health, managed care. I'm an educator and hospice. So kind of wide bit of the spectrum. And excuse me, try not to cough too much. Um, but one of the other things that I'm going to share with you, semi-reluctantly, but I'm still going to share with you. Um, I'm also a former child that suffered from obesity. This particular picture right here is me when I was about 5 or 6 years old in my little ballet tutu and things like that. And at that time, in order to fit into my tutu, I had to get a girdle. So I was actually kind of a small child at first, but as soon as I hit school, and for some unknown reason, I blossomed up, so to speak. And then, as you can see, I was still chubby. This is a couple of years later, at the age of 7 or 8. There's other pictures hidden in boxes somewhere. So I do understand where children are coming from and can have some difficulties dealing with being overweight. Okay, so why? Why is this a concern? Why are we talking about this? Why is this something that Parkland, and if you're a member of Parkland, that's wonderful. If you're not a member of Parkland Health Plan, that's also wonderful. The importance here is children, not anything else. Okay, so how common or how prevalent is childhood obesity and concerns with children not being within kind of like that, those little scales that we have, which we're going to look at a couple of those in just a minute. So in 2017 to 2020, children between the ages of 2 and 19, so it's a little, a little before our scope and a little after our scope that we're talking about today, but still, there was 19.7 children and adolescents that were affected with being either overweight or obese. And that's just in the United States. So that comes out to about 14.7 million children. When you look at the breakdown over age spans and things like that, there's 12.7 of that percent of that number were between the ages of 2 and 5. So they've already kind of developed not ideal eating habits and things like that. The next is between 6 and 11. We look at 20.7%. Sorry. And then 12 to 19-year-olds, we have a larger of 22%. And the concern with that is that's going to carry on until adulthood. Now, we do also see some effects with various populations. So non-Hispanic Asians, there's only about 9% of the children that suffer with overweight and obesity. Non-Hispanic whites, it's 16.6%. Non-Hispanic Black is 24.8%, and Hispanics, it's 26.2%. And a lot of that just comes from the types of foods that we eat. We know that different cultures and things like that do have a tendency to have different foods that they eat. When I grew up, being in upstate New York, a lot of our foods were of like English, German descent because that's what my ancestors were. So those were the things that we did. So actually, we kind of had some of the German food was pretty good, but the English food is kind of blah and bland. So in Texas, when we look at Texas, the CDC states that 4 in 5 children and adolescents from 6 to 19 years old are affected by being overweight or obese. In Texas, our youth, and they looked at mostly like 10 to 17-year-olds. So we're looking at the middle school to high school population, have slightly higher numbers of 20.7% being suffering from obesity. So that is a big concern. Texas ranks 10th in the US as far as states with problems for obesity. Not really one of those top 10 things that we want to have. Okay. So there are health risks related to obesity, not just as an adult, but also as a child. There's problems with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, breathing problems like asthma and sleep apnea, joint problems, and heart disease. And a lot of times people may look at this and parents look at this and think, well, my child's not going to have any of these problems or concerns. But if they start with a less than healthy diet when they're very young, one of the things that I do in my current career and position is I read a lot of medical records and I look over and look for things with our children as far as healthy living. Um, and I'm seeing a lot of teenagers being diagnosed now with high blood pressure or they have high cholesterol. We're seeing, young adults in their 20s and 30s having heart attacks. Did that sometimes happen in the past? Of course, because we don't know everyone's underlying health conditions and things like that. And some small things are not depicted until something happens. However, we are seeing that more. Type 2 diabetes used to be considered just strictly an adult ailment. You didn't get type 2 diabetes until you were like over the age of 35 or 40. Well, now we have children that are 15 and 16 getting diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So they're already having to start on diabetic medication, which that just causes concerns for down the road. That puts them at risk for other diseases that come with diabetes at a much younger age and an earlier start. Okay. And then, of course, like breathing problems, asthma and sleep apnea, um, you know, anything with added weight will increase the chance of sleep apnea. A lot of people that are overweight and obese suffer from that. That's the laying down and kind of breathing funny at night and sometimes catching your breath at night. Sometimes requires some additional treatments and things. And then, of course, joint pains. We know if we put on weight, our joints get a little bit achy. And then, of course, heart disease can come from any of these things. Okay, so this is a very serious concern that we have, that if we don't um, change things, then the life expectancies that we have now, which is, I believe the average now is about 76, it's going to be less than that. We're going to go back to the old days when the life expectancy for a person may only be in their 60s. Okay. So what's healthy? When we're talking about our kiddos, what's kind of healthy? Now you want to be really careful though. Okay, so this is a chart, and this one is done actually by Cincinnati Children's Hospitals. So it's a pretty accurate. CDC posted this to assist with like kind of averages. So we have the law of averages, and of course, pardon me, every child is not the same. They don't develop exactly the same. They don't grow exactly the same. So you notice that there's, for the ages, there are, average inches and things like that. And it is divided male and female because, we don't develop exactly the same. Different things happen to our bodies at different times. Men tend to be taller, not always, but they tend to be a little taller. Girls will be taller though at certain spots, and then all of a sudden the boys will get their growth spurts and they'll start being taller. Our bone structures are a little bit different during puberty and adolescence. We know that girls have the onset of their periods and they start developing breasts. So of course their weights are going to fluctuate a little bit differently than the boys. So you'll see certain times and certain ages where the girls may be a little heavier or a little taller than the boys. So, but again, this is just averages. Okay. And this is not taking into consideration any bone structure or anything like that. I have friends that their son is, I want to say he's 13 and he's already 6 feet tall. That's not 100% the norm. Okay. It can happen. It does happen, but he's a little bit taller than most of his peers. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So this is just like averages. Okay, when I showed you that one picture when I was 5, if you look at this, 5 or 6, it says the average weight is about 60 pounds. Well, at that point, I was already like 80 or 90 pounds. So I was already on a downhill swing. Okay, so that wasn't healthy. People will go up and down a little bit too. just depending what's going on hormonally too. That, every child seems to have a little what we call a pudgy stage where their face gets maybe a little bit rounder and they may put on pounds. Not 100% of children do this, but I'd say statistically at least 90% do. And it's not always extreme. I'm the mother of four. None of my four children were the same whatsoever. I have two girls, I have two boys. Definitely not the same. One of the girls and one of the boys has more problems with their weight than the other ones do. So you just never know um, how certain people are going to grow and things like that. Oops, there we go. Okay, so I'm sure all of you have heard the doctors mention and say something about the BMI, the body mass index. Now, this is the wonderful way on how to calculate the BMI. You take the weight per pounds, you take the height in inches and you square it, and then you multiply by a conversion factor of 703. Now, where the 703 came from, I don't know. The simplest way to do it is you Google BMI calculator, quite honestly, and that will give you where you plug in the height and the weight, and it does it for you. So then you've pretty much got it fairly accurate. This is a pretty standard BMI or body mass index chart. Down here at the bottom, you'll notice it says that it's got the optimal weights are in green. Okay, so you take the height of a person or a child in this case, and you look at their weight. So this kind of removes the age factor. So if you do have a child who is 6 feet tall and at the age of 13, then you can look to see, well, does their weight fall within like a certain weight span? Now you will find some that have it like every 5 pounds. I think most of them are kind of every 10 pounds, and they, just because the graphs would be so phenomenal. Okay, so then the yellow part is overweight. So that means we've got a little bit of a concern. They've kind of gone up, but then again, like I mentioned, we want to look at where they are with their growth and development. Okay, so if they're, a little bit shorter, but maybe a little bit overweight and they're starting puberty already, well, they may be in this overweight side a little bit, and that may not stay that way for a long period of time. Okay, so it's like, don't start to panic if a child falls within some, like the little bit overweight. You've got to look at the big picture and not just, what's going on. So then we have the orange section, which is obese. Okay. And this section we do want to be a little bit concerned with, because even if they're going through certain stages, we still would prefer that they not hit the obese stage. Okay. Because it's harder to come back from that. For children, for adults, for anyone, it's much more difficult to come back from being labeled as obese. Okay. And then, of course, we've got the severely obese in red. There is something I want to take note of. Now, we're mostly talking about children that have concerns with being overweight. There is this other concern down here, this other red area, which is severely underweight. This is also a concern that we need to be very aware of. And this is especially a concern with our children, that we want to make sure that they're not suffering from any growth and development things that will slow them down. There's a thing called failure to thrive, which is the body has difficulty putting on weight, in a very, very simplistic definition. Very simplistic. Okay, there's a lot more that can go into that. So and this can happen to, children, that they will fall into that. I have a friend that has twins, and one of her twins, and of course, these twins are now 26 years old, but one of them still suffers slightly from failure to thrive. He has just a hard time maintaining his weight. Okay. The other concern is teenagers. And of course, I am referring a little bit to female teenagers more so than males, though male teenagers can still have concerns with being underweight. is we have our adolescent girls suffering from, you know, concerns with their body image that go to the other extreme. Instead of being overweight, they're extremely underweight. And we need to watch for things like anorexia and bulimia and things like that, diseases where they are intentionally being underweight. Okay. So this is just a big picture. So when you go to the pediatrician and they're charting, you know, where your child is, this is kind of what they're looking at and seeing where they are with the rest of the population and the rest of children other places. So if they're at a 95 percentile, that means they're 95% different than someone else. Okay. Okay. So today's challenges. Okay. So there was a study done, and of course, regretfully, the study's kind of old, but unfortunately, I couldn't find any more updated and recent studies. I'm sure there's some out there, but for whatever reason. But the study was fairly accurate, and I feel it's fairly accurate still today. In 2011 to 2014, they found that those that aged 2 to 19 showed a decrease in obesity, which means they were more close to regular weight, you know, the normal average, if with households that had education increased. So what that means is that if the parents completed high school, the children had less obesity than those that maybe the parents did not graduate from high school. If the parents have some college education, the students, or excuse me, the children were less obese than those with just a high school education. Okay, so when they looked at the numbers of people based on economic standing, you know, what their income was, it was found that those with the in the higher income group were at about 10%, almost 11% of the children had problems with obesity. Middle class, it went up to 19%, and then the lowest income was 18.9, so also almost 19%. Um, so they do contribute some of that on the fact that, you know, they may have a little bit more routine, or perhaps, you know, it's expensive to buy food that's healthy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Um, So, and we're going to talk a little more about that in a minute. Another increase, or another thing for obesity in non-Hispanic, Asian, and Hispanics boys were lower in the highest income group. So for some reason, and this is both non-Hispanic Asian boys and Hispanic boys were lower in the higher income. Now that can be contributed to the fact that maybe they were in more sports or something. Okay, for girls, the obesity frequency was lower in the higher group when they looked just at the higher level group. For non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic Asian, and Hispanic, with no difference based on income for non-Hispanic Black girls. So, you know, girls seem to kind of do, I guess, a little bit better than boys sometimes. You know, there's just kind of some crazy numbers out there. So, some additional factors. Um, then we talk about obesity. Okay, so there's some physical factors. Obesity really can be hereditary. Okay, because of, you know, whatever our family histories might be as far as underlying comorbidities or illnesses. So like if so for the next example, it says metabolic rates. Okay, so the metabolic rates means how fast our metabolism, or how fast our body burns off food. My metabolism, my burning off food and calories is not super fast. If I sit still, which unfortunately I do way more than I wish, my metabolism is much slower. So if I don't watch what I eat, I gain weight. Okay. Also, insulin resistance. So metabolism and insulin resistance, those can be things that we can get through our family, through our bloodline. Okay. So that's why they say or why obesity can be considered a hereditary thing is because there's also contributing factors that lead to that. But as far as the insulin resistance go, and this does not necessarily mean diabetes, okay? It just means that if you have a little insulin resistance, the way your body breaks down sugars and stuff like that, it can actually store, pardon me, extra sugar. And when it does that, it can lead to weight gain, okay? And then, of course, we've got all these environmental influences and things like that. You know, everyone's got a busy schedule. Okay. Kids are in school or go to school, or they have to go to daycare because we have to work to be able to put food on the table and things like that. Children may play sports if they're a little bit older or do other activities. Transportation can be an issue. I personally, there's three of us in our home that work, and we have one car. So sometimes transportation can be a challenge, or you can have, a car that's not working, or, whatever, convenience. Okay, there's a lot of things. And um, when I'm talking convenience, I'm also talking like with the stores. We have these lovely things called like 7-Eleven and Racetrack and things like that. And sometimes it's just so much easier if we're going to go for snacks or something like that. We'll stop at the convenience store because we can just grab a bag of chips or something like that and give it to our child who's screaming because they're starving versus going to the grocery store to get healthier snacks. Though I do notice that many of the convenience stores now are putting at least a little bit of fruit and things in their stores. But instead of going to get groceries, where we pick up things like apples and oranges and bananas and things like that for children to eat. And meals, if we look at meals, it takes time to prepare a home cooked meal. Um, and it's way quicker sometimes to just go through a drive through. And a lot of the drive throughs, unfortunately, are not always as nutritionally friendly as we would like them to be, or that should be. Okay, so just being with the time itself and having to do quick fixes sometimes will take up time. Okay, so how do we work with these lovely challenges that we have? Okay, so we want to try to avoid certain things. Okay, we want to limit eating certain foods. Or excuse me, that's not what I meant. What to avoid or stop. So limited eating, and by that I mean someone not eating certain foods or not wanting to try new things. I mean, we know how it is. Our children will be around and they're gonna say, "No, I don't want to try that because it doesn't look good, or it doesn't smell good, or I just don't want to." Okay, so they limit themselves by not trying things that might be healthy. They may look at a kiwi and say, "That looks really weird, so I don't want to eat it." Okay, and they really should try it because kiwis are really good. They refuse to eat certain food groups. I have always had a challenge with my children getting them to eat vegetables. The girls actually do better than the boys eating vegetables, but I mean, they get very narrow-minded on what kind of vegetables they want to eat, or some children don't want to eat fruit, or they really prefer not to drink a glass of milk, little things like that. Too much junk food or foods with really low nutritional value. Okay, so we have our chips and our Cheetos and things like that, there's very little nutritional value in chips and things like that. They help comfort us. They're good comfort foods, and it doesn't matter how young or how old you are. But nutritionally, they're really not perfect for us. And then, though I don't know if it's as horrible as it was back in the day, but there's the clean your plate mentality. And by what that I mean is, when I was a kid, I mean, it was you had food on your plate and you cleaned your plate. It didn't matter if you were full or not. You cleaned your plate. And of course, then there was sometimes that little um, bonus for you, that if you cleaned your plate, you could have a cookie. Okay, the little bribe. Eat all your food and all that stuff, and then you can have a cookie. Okay. And, so we were forced. I mean, I even remember one time I sat with a pot pie, of course, not necessarily the most nutritious food, sat with a pot pie for like 40 minutes and told that even though I didn't like it, I didn't want it, I wasn't hungry, I had to eat it. Okay. So we really need to not do that to our children, especially our young children. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. And then portion size. If you put too much on a plate, someone's not going to necessarily want to eat all that. Okay, and it's more difficult sometimes for them. A child, especially when you look at like our elementary school age children, they're not necessarily always going to want to finish their plate. Okay, and then they're forced to eat even if they're not necessarily hungry. Okay. We do want to try to avoid certain things though. We want to try to avoid sugary drinks like soda and fruit punch and chocolate milk. And yeah, I'm with the kids. I love my chocolate milk. Okay. But it's not necessarily the best stuff for us. Okay. We want to attempt to stay away from like fruit juices because it's not that they're necessarily 100% bad for us. We want to be very selective of our fruit juices. They do have some vitamins in them, but they also tend to have a lot of sugar. Now, one of the things you can do if you're looking at fruit juices is look at the ones that are light or low sugar. Once you get used to it, they really are not horrible and they're better for you. Foods that have a lot of trans fat, like in baked goods, our cookies, our cupcakes, our cakes, our brownies, all the stuff that we really, really enjoy. Okay. So we want to try to avoid those. And then canned fruits and vegetables, because I am one that does a lot of canned fruits and vegetables myself. So, but their nutritional value is not as good as other sources. Okay. So, what does it mean and where do we start when we are trying to get our kids to eat healthy? Okay, so eating healthy means we have a variety of foods. Okay, we want to get those food groups covered, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the fats, the vitamins, the minerals, because everything that we eat works together. Our body uses different things for different energy and for our immune systems and things like that. So it's very important to have a balanced diet. Not easy, but very important. Okay. So, and we want to watch our portion sizes. Okay. Um, Depending on a child's age. Now, when we've got our younger kiddos, our 3 to 6 year olds, maybe a little bit older, you have to kind of judge your own children. But our 3 to 6 year olds tend to really be the pickiest eaters and sometimes a little bit younger than that. Um, and they're going to change what they like and when they like to eat certain things and stuff like that. So, for example, what I mean by that. So, one morning you may find that they are just like totally devouring their breakfast. And then 3 hours later, they're totally devouring their lunch. And then they go to eat dinner and they're like, well, I'm not hungry. Or they eat 3 or 4 bites and I'm full. Well, that's okay. I mean, it really is. It's frustrating sometimes as a parent or caregiver, but it's really okay. They're going to know what their body needs. So forcing them to eat just because we think they need to eat um, develops bad habits. Okay. So we as parents or caregivers do decide when and where and what they eat, but the children need to decide on how much they eat. Okay. Um, because they're going to tell us when they're full. They're going to know when their body doesn't want to eat anymore. And when their body's hungry, they're going to let us know that too. Okay, so we want to try to develop some positive eating habits. And this first one is like really, really difficult with today's challenges of people going in 101 directions, especially when we get our teenagers, okay, because they're in sports or they're driving or they have some other extracurricular activity after school stuff that they're trying to do. Okay, but we're going to want to try to eat as a family and make it positive and make it pleasant and try not to have disagreements and negative comments and things like that, which, okay, we're all families. We understand that. Excuse me. Um, and family does not have, family is whatever your family is. Okay. um, mom, dad, and kids, mom and kids, a grandparent, a parent and children, a cousin and a niece, whatever family is, it doesn't matter. Today's families are wonderful because they're diverse and they're unique. Okay. Whoever is in your household, whoever is part of your family, you attempt to do that. I'm trying to make healthy choices for everyone. I mean, we may not all want to eat this healthy food. Oops, wait a minute, get where I can see my cursor. There we go. Whoops, sorry. Excuse me. But the healthy foods are, they actually are kind of good. And once you get used to it, and everyone gets used to it, that's good. Try to always eat at around the same time every day. Okay. Now during school and work weeks, sometimes that's easier because we know we get up at a certain time and we can have breakfast, then lunches, work or school or whatnot at usually the same time, and then we come home and we have dinner. Okay. What's hard is on the weekends, over holidays, during the summer, you still want to try to be consistent with that. Okay. And you want to plan meals every 3 to 4 hours or have a snack, because that stops us from like starving, getting to the point that we're so hungry that we're just going to start inhaling everything that we see and we want to eat. Okay. Because our kiddos will do that. Okay. Um, and we want to try to not have them do that. So if they start to get hungry, between that 4 hour span from lunch, or excuse me, breakfast and lunch, we'll then offer them something healthy to eat. Okay. And don't have direct or distractions, excuse me, when you're eating. Shut the TV off. Okay. So people are paying attention to what they're eating. When we don't pay attention to what we're eating, we tend to eat more. Okay. So what's good for kiddos? And I shouldn't even just say this is good just for children. Okay. This is also good for us as adults. And we want to set the right example. Okay. So, of course, fresh fruits and vegetables. Doing frozen vegetables over canned vegetables. Now, if you are like me, like I admitted, I do a lot of canned vegetables and really should be doing more frozen. Frozen vegetables do taste different than canned. The frozen ones do taste more like fresh vegetables. Okay. We want to watch our meats, not saying cut out meat. If your family is one that does enjoy meat, that's fine. Try to make it lean meat. And of course, fish is very good for you. Cereal. Cereal is a good thing as long as it's not the super sweet cereal, which is, of course, what our children love. And that's children of any age. My teenagers or my children when they were growing up and they were teenagers, I mean, they love their Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Fruity Pebbles more so than they did their Cheerios and things. For snacks, offer things like granola. And you can get like the granola bars or just little piece of granola. Nuts, if they don't have any nut allergies or things like that, nuts are good. You don't want to go too overboard with nuts because, sometimes they can be a little, have some fatty in them, but they're still a very healthy snack. Popcorn. Okay, so not the extreme butter popcorn, but the light butter and light salt. Okay. Try to have 2% milk, excuse me, or less versus whole milk. Now, I also understand that some of the younger children, like our 3 and 4 year olds, who are maybe not intaking as much food sometimes as they need to, may need whole milk. Well, that's okay. If that's something that they need, then they need to, follow what you discuss with your healthcare provider. Try to get them used to whole wheat bread. Okay. And then things that are like sometimes in treats would be like our desserts. Excuse me. Cookies and ice cream and candy, things like that. Make it like a once a week treat. Do a Sunday treat. Holidays, birthdays, things like that. Chips, not every day for snack. If they do like the granola and the popcorn, maybe chips twice a week or something like that, something they can look forward to. And things like frozen pizza. Okay. Okay, some guidelines and tips for eating healthy. And some of these I know are really a challenge. Okay. They're a challenge for me to do, and I know they're a challenge for other people to do because lives, like I said previously, are very busy. So try to do food prep, meaning like if you are off on Sundays and you're able to cook up a bunch of food to have during the week. So then all you have to do instead of running by, McDonald's to grab a quick burger or chicken nuggets, then you've already got them things in the house where you just pull it out of the freezer the night before or pull it out of the refrigerator or whatever and have it ready to go in the oven as soon as you get home. So you can try to do meal prep on Sundays if that works for you whenever you have a day. Chicken is a great thing to cook up in advance, and because it's so versatile with doing it with salads, and you can do nuggets and you can do tacos and things like that. Double or triple a recipe on the weekend. So if you're making a casserole on the weekend, make a double recipe. So then you have it for that particular day, but then you can also have it for leftovers during the week, one night, maybe even two nights, depending what it is and your family's tolerance to leftovers. Frozen vegetables, as I said, they're pretty inexpensive and you can heat them up really quick on the stove or in the microwave. Um, Try to get healthy snacks, like I kind of already mentioned. Get things like apples and oranges or unripe bananas that'll last for a little while. Another thing that you can get is they have like chip fruit. You can get the bags of the banana chips or apricots, you know, raisins. Be careful with raisins though, because they do have a little bit of extra sugar. Other things like grapes, blueberries, depending on the season, of course. Um, find out what everyone likes, okay? And then see how you can cater to them, okay? For example, if you have a child that would rather eat raw carrots instead of cooked carrots, one of my kiddos loves carrots, but they won't eat cooked carrots. They'll only eat them if they're raw. There's nothing wrong with substituting the raw vegetable for a cooked one, if that's possible. Okay. Again, as I already mentioned, save desserts and sweets for something of a special occasion. And then lead by example. If you start eating healthy, your children will follow suit. And you're going to find out too that you actually feel a little bit better and maybe have a little more energy and things like that. Also, exercise and activities. And I'm only going to touch on this just a little bit because I actually do have some additional webinars coming up in the course of the year. And one of them will be focusing on a little bit on some age appropriate exercises and things like that. So um, just some things to get them started is try to set limits on television and recreational screen time. They if they're school age, they're probably getting some computer time during the daytime. So we want to try to limit that. So for example, like 3 and 4 year olds should maybe have less than an hour of screen time. 5 year olds and up should have 2 hours or less of screen time. Try to do physical activities as a family. One, it actually puts you closer with your children. And I also understand, I'm probably hearing people say, oh, I don't have the time for that. That just takes up too much time. Yes and no. Okay. Um, Getting out, getting some fresh air, getting some activity, doing things like walking, playing catch, teaching your child how to skip or hop, depending if like they're little or not. Dancing. I mean, you can do that while you're cooking dinner, you know, dance around the kitchen. The kids will think it's hysterical. Teaching your child how to ride a bike. Okay. Um, you can take a 10-minute walk. It's amazing how it also will make you feel, as well as your children, knowing that you're taking just 15, 20 minutes away from everything to spend and focus on them. And you can let them know too, okay, it's like, okay, 20-minute walk time. Let's go get around the block really quick. Okay, then we'll come back and finish fixing dinner. Okay. Um, and then as your children get older, of course, they're going to pick some activities and stuff that they want to do themselves. Another thing is to make sure to get routine checkups with healthcare providers. Okay, it's really important for them to be under the care of a healthcare provider to help monitoring growth and development, checking their activity level, making sure that they're right on target with those age appropriate growth areas, checking on their eating habits. And healthcare providers will have other suggestions and things like that. Plus, you also want to make sure you're staying up on immunizations and things to protect them from catching. There's been some outbreaks of measles and things like that. So we want to make sure we keep on top of that kind of uh, care for our children as well. Okay. Just some real quick closing comments. Some of the most important things is that, knowing that your child is going to have peaks and changes during growth and development. Okay. We want to make sure that we stay supportive. We don't want to say negative comments to our children about, oh, by the way, you're getting fat. We don't even want to say things like, oh, you're too skinny. Um, we want to make sure we're really supportive and really just monitoring and watching and observing. We also want to make sure that we let our children know and understand that other children are cruel. And sometimes adults can be cruel too. Okay. So we just want them, now we don't want them to think it's okay to be horribly obese, but we want them to understand that that we're supporting the fact that it's a struggle. So let's work together to fix that and feel better. Because once they, if they currently are, if this is something that you are trying to figure out to help your child lose some weight, you start doing healthy eating and getting exercise and things like that, it will definitely help. Okay. And consistency and example. So if you stay with, okay, we only go out to eat or grab fast food on Tuesdays and maybe on Saturday, get a little off our routine. We only have dessert on Sunday, and then lead by your example. Let them see that this is important for you too. It will help the entire family feel better and become healthier. Okay. So if you need any assistance or you want any additional information or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information. That's my work number and my email. So if you have any concerns, I'm definitely open to hear from you. This is just a list of the references. Most references I always try to do with things that are .org or .gov because they're the most reputable. Not that there aren't some good articles out there as well. And that is the end of our slideshow. So I want to thank you all very much let me stop sharing here. Oops. Maybe. Oh, there we go. There we go. I want to thank you all very much for listening. And I hope there was some information that will assist you. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful, really quick, just to let you know, I will be doing quarterly webinars dealing with children. And the upcoming will be, as I mentioned, exercise and things like that to help us get through that summer. And then in August or September, I'll be doing one about some back to school things. How do we help our children with weight management and exercise and getting back into the routine and swing of school? And then in November, I'll be talking about some holiday things, things we can help our kids enjoy the holidays and have, great fun and things. Still have some of those special holiday treats, but still staying conscious and staying healthy. So I hope you have a terrific afternoon, and I sure appreciate your time. Thank you.